I just wanted to thank the board for inviting me in this honor. It's so meaningful. It's such a great organization and deserves everybody's support. So I thank all of those who came tonight. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you, but extenuating circumstances. All the best to everybody. Thanks again.
Good evening to all of you and welcome. We're so delighted that you can be here tonight, and we're delighted that we're going to have an opportunity now. And we are sitting here in the New Jersey Vietnam Veterans Memorial and Museum and Education Center to have a conversation with our Patriot of the Year honoree, Edward Kim Foley III. So Kim, welcome to you and congratulations to you on being honored as the Patriot of the Year. Let's start off in the beginning. Before we get to your military experience, let's start at the beginning, which is always a good place to start.
All right.
In the beginning. Talk a little bit about your own background and growing up before you got to your military stage.
I'm a Jersey boy through and through. And actually on our address in just south of Morristown, we've been there since, I've been there since 1953. So when I talk to my Marine buddies that stayed in, and they say I'm still in the same address, and they've moved 28 times. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, we've been born and bred in Jersey. My mom was actually born in Hawaii, and she and my dad met soon after. Well, I think I have a picture of them I sent in from 1942. Young ensign in the Navy, captain of a minesweeper, charged of keeping the Hawaiian Islands mine-free for the balance of the war. Pretty peaceful, but needed to be done.
Big job.
Big job. And he was good at it. We were at the time, his father was a Chevrolet dealer in Newark, New Jersey. It's the largest Chevrolet agency in the country. And he started in 1911 as a Mitchell dealer. That was the problem, right? So 10 years later, he went bankrupt, but a friend bankrolled him to become a Chevrolet dealer. So he got involved with that. My pop was working for General Motors prior to the war. In Pearl Harbor, he joined up. And ultimately, after the war, came back. My grandfather was getting sick, and he ran the business. 57, he found this funny little business in Union, New Jersey, Caterpillar dealer, Smith Brothers. And he went out to Peoria, Illinois, which is where you go when you work with Caterpillar. And he got the numbers from the dealership to acquire it. And he wrote them down, and they said, well, are you going to do it? He says, no, I got a trip I'm going to take. He was a sailor. And he wrote all those numbers down on a piece of paper, took them with him, studied them, came back, and signed up as a dealer.
At the time that you got involved in the military, why did you decide you wanted to be part of the military?
I can trace it to a couple of things, Jack, and I was talking with Bill and Mike earlier, and it was just kind of, yeah, I want to see that. I want to know what's going on. I want to be a part of it. It wasn't any great swell patriotism when I started. I would have been proud to be a Marine, obviously, at the time. But, yeah, we were sophomore in college looking at our options. Draft was in effect. We knew we were going to get drafted. So, my patriotism is hidden a little bit behind the draft, that we were going in anyway.
So you talked about your decision to become involved in the military and specifically the Marine Corps. So let me ask you this question. And I suspect there'll be folks in our audience, members of that Marine Corps, who are going to be delighted by this question and answer, and the others will listen politely. But my question to you is this. You want to be involved in the military. There are a lot of branches. You chose the Marine Corps. Why?
I had a good friend. Let me think. He was... he and I grew up together, and he went to Villanova. It was in the ROTC program in Villanova, and ended up being a pilot. I said, I want to do that too. How hard is that? And he'd spent the NROTC at Villanova, and it turned out I got so far down the physicals, I had a stigmatism in my left eye, and the Marine said, well, we got a great job on the ground for you. I said, oh, that's interesting. So Clay, my friend, went right from college graduation right to Pensacola to train, which is unusual because most officers go through the basic school. And I just felt that, look, if we're going to go through this thing, I want to be well trained. That was probably the part. And I like, the Marines will tell you, well, you look at the dress blues, and that's always an attractive part of the gimmick of getting you in. But anyway, that was really how it started, and that was it.
So talk about your experiences that your training that leads up to your involvement in Vietnam. You talk about the basic school to start with.
Right. This was about a week after Bobby Kennedy was shot, graduated from college, and the following week we were on our way to Quantico, Virginia.
A period of extraordinary turmoil.
Oh, it
in
was
our
just
country.
crazy.
You
Martin
talk
Luther
about-
King
Right.
had been killed the March before. You had the Tet Offensive in January. 1 week, 500 military, 500 servicemen were killed in Vietnam. 500 in a week. So that was the overlay. And at that time, you could see this was pretty serious. So we went in, started in July, and I was in the same class as the Annapolis graduates. Despite the fact they went to Annapolis for 4 years, took all that training, they still had to go to the basic school. And I turned to them, I said, what are you guys doing here for? But made some great friends. We had about 200 in our class. In my platoon, we lost about 10% in Vietnam. So back to the basic school, that just gave you all the rudiments of being an officer, of leading in combat, of just making sure that you understood how important your troops were.
So you finished your period of time in the Marine Corps. You came back to the family business you talked about. But that was not the end of your involvement with the Marine Corps and the Marine Corps values. Talk about that.
Well, what happened was, I guess 2003, 2004, we started to have reunions in our officers class. And we had, in my platoon, we lost 10%, as I mentioned. And I had gotten involved with a group of us who'd raised some money from our company down at the basic school, the OCS 1-69 or whatever it was. And we raised a bunch of money, and we decided we were going to go visit some of these military folks in the hospitals because they were coming out of Iraq with nothing. Basically a bed sheet, they wrap them up, take them to Landstuhl, get them stable, and then bring them over to Washington. And a friend, a classmate of mine was assistant commandant of the Marine Corps, it's a 4-star. We had about 8 4-star generals in our class, and the rest of us were first lieutenants. But so we got involved with this reunion, raised some money, and started visiting Bethesda, which is now Walter Reed. And I ran across these folks that were supporting the wounded and just going up and down the hall, seeing what they needed. And they needed a lot of stuff. The families needed a lot of stuff. You know, they're just trying to pay for basic stuff. Training, you know, boarding the dog, airfare. I'm an hourly worker, truck worker. My son's in the hospital and the like. So we had, I'm walking up and down the hall and I started meeting these folks from the Semper Fi Fund, now known as the Semper Fi in America's Fund. And there was a lady that started that in 2003, sitting at her kitchen table. They raised $500, and we've since raised about $500 million and given away.
$500 million with a B.
With a B. And we are one of the highest, one of only 3, the highest rated military charities in the country, and they do a fabulous job. But we were able to put things in the hands of the families and put things in the families for transition to civilian life, and then the whole wellness and interactive medicine theater with TBS and everything else. So it was a wonderful association. So I joined up eventually, or they asked me to join, and General Joe Dunford, the former chairman of our Joint Chief, is our chairman, and Bill and Mike and I were talking about him yesterday. He's just been a fabulous leader. So we're still very much involved, and over the years, you give these youngsters a van, and that might have been 2006, and they wear out, and they're $60,000. So we've told them that we would be with them for life, and we've held true to that. That's what we intend to do. So it's a pretty amazing, amazing organization.
And wonderful work.
Great people.
Yeah. Great people, not a surprise. Great people. So last question for you here, and I'll give you a preface to it. So I've taught an undergraduate seminar at Yale for 16 years now. It's about famous trials. One of the trials we focus on is the My Lai massacre court-martial. And part of the reason for that is not just the legalities, but also the history. What was going on at the time? What was going on in Vietnam? What was going on in the nation here? And I'm struck often by how many times these young students, who are marvelous young people and very, very intelligent, but they know very little, if anything at all, about the Vietnam era. So my question to you is this: if you had some young people in front of you today, what would you say to them about your experience in Vietnam, our experience in Vietnam, what we as a nation should think about that era?
Well, you know, in most cases, my experience, you know, things like My Lai were an outlier. You know, you had, and they're all different versions of it, and other activities and instances. But you know, these were people that signed up, joined up, worked hard, and should be recognized for their leadership and their given, and in all instances, because you don't see. I was talking to Bill and Mike earlier. I wish they had some sort of draft, put Amy to work, getting the people to come in or do something for a couple of years. And this is so important, this museum, to show people what happened and to see firsthand. And you're right, they can't. I'm sure your students they're just awestruck. They had no idea. And by and large, the folks I associated with were outstanding. And that's what you saw.
And you were indeed part of that. Kim, again, congratulations on Patriot of the Year. And our thanks to you, not only for your service then, but for your continued service now. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack. Good to see you.